Hey guys, Dr. Childs here. Today we're going to be talking about how to wean off of your thyroid medication safely, which is very important. So I get this question a lot. A lot of patients will start using my supplements. They'll start feeling a lot better. They'll notice that their dose of thyroid medication doesn't need to be as high anymore, and they're thinking to themselves, hey, is it possible for me to be able to now get off of my thyroid medication? Or maybe there are other people, which I see a lot as well, who simply don't like the idea of being reliant upon thyroid medication forever, especially in the face of all of these NDT recalls and problems with thyroid medication dosing and difficulties in getting it and price increasing over time and so on. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to get off of your thyroid medication. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we do though, you should be aware, this is just a disclaimer, that not everyone will be able to get off of their thyroid medication. And I am not recommending that you do this without physician support. All right. For instance, in the case of somebody who has had their thyroid removed or their thyroid ablated, or somebody who is in end-stage Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it is probably not, well, in the case of end-stage, probably not, but in the other cases, it's 100% not possible to get off of your thyroid medication. The reason is simple. Thyroid hormone is required for life. And if your thyroid has been surgically removed or ablated, you must be getting thyroid hormone through some means, and that means medication if you can't produce it yourself. Okay, so if you are somebody in those three camps, or if you have those three diagnoses, then this information does not apply to you. Now you may be able to tweak your dose, that still may occur, but you're not going to be able to get off of that medication. All right, you're going to need that medication forever. But what about everybody else? What about people who have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, if they have hypothyroidism but don't know why? Right, that happens a lot. Somebody just notices that their thyroid is not functioning very well, so they're placed on thyroid medication, and all of a sudden 20 years later they've been taking it forever and they don't know why. This actually happens fairly commonly. Or somebody who had it temporarily because they were overweight and then lost a bunch of weight, and now they want to see if they can get off of it. So there's a lot of reasons, or a lot of patients who fall into this category who may want to try getting off of their medication, and I'm specifically talking to these people. The first step is try to get your doctor on board. You need to be doing this with physician support just to ensure that you don't do anything incorrectly or that you're not going to harm your body or anything like that. So I want to put that disclaimer out. The next thing that you should know when it comes to getting off of thyroid medication, your approach should be low and slow, okay? Because what happens when you take thyroid medication is you are suppressing the normal feedback loop that occurs between your pituitary gland and your thyroid gland, okay? So the more thyroid medication that you take, you are shutting off the communication between your brain and the thyroid gland. Okay? So then what happens as you try to reduce your thyroid medication, you have to hope that your body comes back online and is then can take over for the lost thyroid hormone that you're no longer taking and start producing whatever it can naturally. Now what you'll find in this process is some people can completely get off medication and they'll go back up to 95% or 100%. Some people might go down, they might get off their thyroid medication and their thyroid function only goes to 75%. That could happen as well. And oftentimes it's very difficult to assess how much your body is capable of producing until you actually give it a shot to try and produce some. But if you are taking thyroid medication, you are not allowing that shot to occur, right? Because if you're suppressing your body's ability to produce it, because you're giving it all the thyroid hormone it needs, you won't ever know until you try to give it that chance to kind of go up, okay? So remember, low and slow is the key here. Now I typically recommend that you reduce your dose by about 10 to 15% every 2 to 4 weeks if you want to be very slow and very methodical in your approach. But most people can get away with doing something about 25% every 2 to 4 weeks. Okay, so 25% dose reduction every 2 to 5 weeks for most people. If you tend to be on the more sensitive side, then maybe 10 to 15% every 2 to 4 weeks may be more appropriate for you. So it all kind of depends on your body, how sensitive you are to thyroid hormone, how long you've been on thyroid hormone. The longer you've been on it, for instance, let's say you've been on it for 30 years or something like that, well then you better be a little more cautious about how you're weaning yourself off of it because you've been relying on it for so long. If you've been on your thyroid medication for 6 months or a year or something like that, then you could probably be a little more aggressive. It's not universally true, but that tends to be the case. So let's use a sample dose of 100 micrograms of levothyroxine as an example here. So let's assume that you fit the standard mold, so you want to go down 25% every 2 to 4 weeks. So it would look like this. So you're starting at 100 micrograms. You would immediately go down, because you're starting at day one, by, let's say, in this case, 25%, which means you would immediately drop your dose to 75 micrograms. You would stay at that new dose of 75 micrograms for about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on, again, how you're feeling, because you got to monitor your body as you're doing this. And then once you hit that 2 to 4 week mark, you can then go drop down another 25%. So in this case, you would go from 75 micrograms after being there for 2 to 4 weeks, you drop down to 50 micrograms, and then you would stay there for 2 to 4 weeks. Then after another 2 to 4 weeks, you would go down to 25 micrograms, and then after 2 to 4 weeks, then you would completely go down to 0 and see how your body's doing. This allows a stepwise decrease in your thyroid medication over time, which is slow and controlled. And it allows, while your medication dose is going down in a stepwise fashion, it allows your body to ramp up its own production over that same period of time. And that is really key. Now, how much your body ramps up over that period of time is not really good. You don't know, right? There's not a good way to assess how well your thyroid gland can function until you give it a shot. So you just kind of have to go with it. But I want you to be aware of some expectations as you do this. Number one is that you probably will feel worse. And note, here's where it can get a little bit confusing. Just because you are feeling worse doesn't mean that your thyroid is not doing its job, okay? Because remember, as you have suppressed thyroid function over a period of time, it's going to take some time for that body to kind of kick back online. And as you drop down by, let's say, 25%, your body's not going to immediately replace that 25% that you just dropped down right away. It's going to take several weeks for that to occur. But in the interim, between the time that your body can produce it and the time that you drop down immediately, you might feel that low thyroid function in between. But if you don't give your body enough chance, you'll never, or a long enough period, you'll never know if your body can actually produce it on its own. So it is a little bit of a juggling act, so I want you to be aware of that. Be prepared to feel a little bit worse. Feeling worse can mean that your thyroid is not able to produce it, but it can also be a natural course or a natural side effect as you reduce your dose. Now, if it is the case that it's normal and your body's going to ramp back up, you will only feel worse for a temporary or short period of time, and then you'll start to feel better, and then you'll drop your dose, you'll feel a little bit worse, then you'll start to feel better, then you'll drop your dose, you'll feel a little bit worse, then you'll start to feel better, and so on. So as you're coming down, your body will continually ramp up over that period of time. So you shouldn't feel worse all the time and forever. You should feel worse, just for a short period of time before it starts to get better. And again, it's so variable, it's hard for me to tell you exactly what to expect, but I want you to understand that some fluctuation in how you feel from worse to better is normal during this process. The next thing is, which we kind of already talked about, is you need to make sure that you give your thyroid time to get back to life, okay? Because the way that it works with hormones is the longer you suppress any sort of natural feedback loop, which in this case is the pituitary to the thyroid gland connection, it takes a while for that to kind of get back online. Now, for the thyroid, luckily, the thyroid is one of those that can kind of get back on relatively quickly. One that takes a long time to get back online would be cortisol or even testosterone. And in some cases, complete suppression of, let's say, testosterone, it's not always possible to regain complete function back. But usually in the case of the thyroid, it only takes weeks to months, whereas testosterone may be 6 months to a year, cortisol may be 6 months to a year, or even longer depending on the duration of that suppression. So do be aware that how long it takes is sort of a product of your body and how long you've been on your dose and what dose you've been on. The higher the dose, the longer the suppression, the longer it will take your thyroid to kind of come back online. The next thing that I would recommend is that, highly recommend this, is that you use supplements to augment thyroid function as you are weaning yourself off of thyroid medication. So it is the case that even though you are reducing your thyroid medication, you can still support thyroid function through the use of certain supplements as you do this. Now, specifically, you want to focus on thyroid hormone production supplements, so things like iodine. You want to focus on things that, and L-tyrosine. You want to focus on things that support thyroid conversion, so zinc, selenium, and guggle. And you also want to focus on things that help thyroid hormone sensitivity at the cellular level. So that includes things like vitamin A and vitamin E. So doing this, and actually one final thing I would say here too, is that you can also include, and probably should include, thyroid glandulars, which include enzymes and other things found inside the animal thyroid gland, which you can use, your body can use, and it can actually accelerate and augment thyroid function as well. So using all of these supplements together will help your own thyroid sort of come back to life and support it while it's doing this. And so they should be able to kind of take the edge off of some of the symptoms you might feel in the process. So I would highly recommend that you use supplements during this process if you're going to try it. Do not try it unless you do it with a doctor. So I'm going to strongly recommend that you do it with physician supervision. And you can kind of do it in the way that I've mentioned previously, either 10 to 15% or 25%, depending on the sensitivity. And the length of time usually between the dose droppings is about 2 to 4 weeks. But that's not set in stone. I've done things that are much slower, and I've done things that are much more rapidly. In fact, I've basically taken somebody from 100% to 0% pretty much within a day, and they've done okay. And I've taken people even down 10%, and they've experienced a lot of symptoms. So there's a lot of variability, but this can be used as a general guideline to sort of help you do this. And I do think it's worth it for a lot of thyroid patients. So if you're somebody listening to this and you're not sure whether or not you should do this, it actually is something you might want to consider. Because worst case scenario, you feel a little bit worse for 2 to 3 months as you do this. You find out a lot of information though in the process. You might find out that whatever you're doing isn't working, right? So if you're trying to put your thyroid back online and use natural therapies, but your thyroid doesn't come back online, well then whatever you're doing isn't working. And number two, it might help you to understand how reliant your body is on thyroid medication. So the information that you get while doing this is still very valuable and should be considered in, I would say, most thyroid patients, except those who require thyroid medication to sustain life. So I know that was kind of a long topic, so if you have any questions about that, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer those. If you haven't already, make sure that you download my free thyroid PDF resources. I have tons of information all designed to help thyroid patients like you feel better. So if you like this sort of information, you'll love those free downloads. So that's all I have for you guys today, and otherwise I will see you in the next one.